The NBA All-Star Game is right around the corner, and the Philadelphia 76ers will not be represented this year. Tyrese Maxey, as the only member to have a legitimate chance, will not be representing the Sixers, as no member of the team will be there at All-Star Weekend this year. I want to talk specifically about Tyrese Maxey, the recent turn that is really encouraging from him on the floor, and overall kind of the outlook for why he did not make this All-Star Game. So to dive right into things and to take a look at the roster, let's just take a peek at the Eastern Conference here. These starters, no real surprises in my opinion here. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, and Karl-Anthony Towns. So 2 Knicks in that starting lineup, which does hurt a little bit, but I do think are, I would say, deserving. Karl-Anthony Towns especially, I think, is by far having the best season of his career and is absolutely translating to winning in a way that I think you can't always connect to other parts of his career. Jason Tatum, the defending champs, a guy who has been the best player on the Celtics. Jaylen Brown, especially in recent weeks, been kind of concerned with the level of play from him. Not something in the long haul. He's obviously a very talented basketball player, but it is clear to me that Tatum has been the better of the two this season. Donovan Mitchell, you got to reward a team for being the top seed in the Eastern Conference from start to finish. And Donovan Mitchell, while the stats don't stand out the way they have in some other years, is absolutely translating there. Jalen Brunson, we know who he is at this point, and Giannis, of course, him as well, a guy who's been familiar. And then, of course, looking down at the reserves, there is Jaylen Brown. I will give the respect there. I'm not saying he shouldn't be an all-star. Cade Cunningham, Darius Garland, Tyler Hero. Those are kind of the 3 that you can critique with Maxey, go side by side, and I will circle back to that conversation. Damian Lillard, of course, also in that mix. Frankly, I think Maxey has surpassed Damian Lillard at this point in their respective careers. And then Evan Mobley and Pascal Siakam to round out the squad there. Now, as far as Maxey specifically, this isn't the worst thing in the world for him individually to miss it. I understand it's frustrating from a perspective, but Maxey was asked about this following last night's loss to the Denver Nuggets, and Maxey on not making the All-Star team. Quote, "I'm happy. Actually, I have a lot of connections with the people that made it. Everyone is deserving. That doesn't upset me at all. I'm more focused on helping to trying to help this team win and get better." And while a lot of times I feel like this is lip service from a player, watching the actual clip and hearing Maxey speak on it, I do think there was something a little bit genuine about it. Now, he went down the line, shout out each of these guys. A couple of the quotes that stood out to me. This first one on Darius Garland, which Maxey said, quote, "Darius Garland, I'm so happy he made the All-Star game. He deserves it. He had a lot of adversity last year that he went through it and overcame, helping him lead a team to the 1 seed, so I'm happy for him." He also talked about Cade Cunningham, how they've had their battles both growing up in the Texas area and how cool that is for sort of where they grew up to kind of see that represented. It was all good vibes for Maxey. Now, the point where I don't think this is the worst thing in the world for Maxey is I do think the guy needs some rest. And to don't jump into why I think that is the case there, to speak on him in the season, Tyrese Maxey ranks 2nd in the NBA in minutes at 37.9 per game, 2nd in the NBA in miles traveled per game at 2.91. He trails Mikal Bridges in both categories. His 1.69 miles per game on offense leads the entire NBA. He also ranks 4th in the league in time of possession and 3rd in touches per game. There is a whole lot on Tyrese Maxey's plate, and it's kind of going to be a good thing for him to, I think, get a bit of a week off. Now, granted, if the All-Star voting was moved back slightly in the season, I think there would be no doubt that this guy being an All-Star. To point out his last 7 games here specifically, they've been unbelievable. 37 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists. You can go down the list, both as a playmaker and as a scorer, that he's been absolutely in control from start to finish in each game. There was a cool story told across the broadcast during the Denver Nuggets game last night, where it was talked about Maxey's frustrations, him not playing with the typical joy. And one of the conversations that was had by Kyle Lowry with him is basically saying, don't disrespect the game, don't try and outsmart the game, let things come to you. That if they're going to throw a double at you, keep the ball moving and go and get it back. And we've seen a lot more of Maxey embracing these different styles of defense that are thrown his direction. He's constantly getting 2 and 3 bodies thrown his way, and it is incredibly frustrating for a guy who essentially in most situations is the only creator on the floor for this Sixers team. But to his credit, he has found ways around it, and there are moments like last night in that Nuggets game where everyone knows Tyrese Maxey is trying to get to the basket, and you still just can't stop him. So I think there are plenty more All-Star games in Tyrese Maxey's future. If it is not this season, I can live with that being the case. Now, to look at the season-long standpoint for Maxey, averaging 27.5 points per game, 6.1 assists, 3.5 rebounds, the shooting splits continue to skyrocket up to 44.2% from the field, 34.3% from 3, each still well below his sky-high standard as an individual player, but they are on their way up, and I am confident that is going to continue here. Now, to continue on a little bit with the Maxey theme here, that I do believe this is a guy who is playing probably the best basketball of his career. I know that it's not going to kind of look the same in the scaled out view, that there is no Joel Embiid next to him. There is no Paul George next to him, that this isn't translating to victories at the rate that we would hope it to be the case. But from an individual growth standpoint, I do think this is a stretch that in the long run, we'll look back at Tyrese Maxey's career and think about how much he improved by having so much on his plate in such really unique circumstances. This has been a bizarre season of Sixers basketball, and Maxey has really taken the brunt of a lot of it. I'm pretty happy to see him bounce back and see that this version of him is still in there. There was a part of me that was concerned for this season that we were losing Maxey, and I don't mean that by the standpoint of, this guy forgetting how to play basketball a la Markelle Fultz or Ben Simmons here. What I mean by that is he's a guy who approaches this game with such a professionalism and such a joy on the floor that stands out. And that really was not the case for a large part of the beginning part of the season. Now we're seeing the Tyrese Maxey that we have come to know and love and has become an important part of the Sixers franchise. Now, there's a variety of factors that play into it. For starters, I don't want a guy to be happy when he's losing. That is pretty telling of an outlook of a player there. And it is good that Maxey gets a little fired up with that. Now, granted, he needs to learn to center that in a better way. It shouldn't be arguing with referees about calls constantly and kind of carrying himself with a little bit of a different emotion than I think that we've seen from him at any time in his career. But the bottom line is he is back on track, and it is translating here. Now, this is a crucial stretch for this Sixers team. We obviously saw them rip off 4 wins in a row. They did suffer a loss to the Denver Nuggets. As much as that was a painful execution down the stretch, that final possession was really frustrating to me and very clear that the play was not run remotely as it was drawn up from Nick Nurse. Those are things that you got to take those growing pains, and frankly, we're seeing the effects of there being so many different lineup combinations that have been thrown on the floor. This is not a team that has gone through the battles together and been able to build out that chemistry. With all these moving parts around the edges, that has been the case from start to finish this season. They just have not been able to, round out those things and get on the same page there. So I can excuse this for one loss, but at the same time, it's tough to sit here and be fine about moral victories at this state of the season when they are in the 11th seed in the Eastern Conference and well below the level of expectations there. Now, we did get a reassuring report here from our guy, Philly Sixers Galaxy, talking about how Nick Nurse's job is at stake, and he also mentioned in a similar report here, and this has come from a couple different areas, that while Guerschon Yabusele is being widely desired by a number of playoff contenders, that they view him very highly and would like to work out a long-term future if possible. That is easier said than done, that there are going to be some cap finessing or different moves that need to be made done for that to even be possible. But the bottom line to me is if there is any outcome that involves keeping Guerschon Yabusele, that should be option A. If that means you have to, move on from the Kelly Oubres of the world, although I love Kelly and he's been playing awesome, far better basketball than I expect to be the case, that would be a little frustrating to me, but I do think it is worth it from that standpoint. I think the best case scenario is if you're packaging the Andre Drummond contracts, the KJ Martin contracts, trying to make sure you have that full access to that mid-level exception, and even that you're really kind of hoping is the case there. You're kind of banking on Guerschon really loving it here, which does seem to be the case. There does feel to be a little bit more of a connection and a loyalty than is often the case with these veteran minimums contract, but if that is an option, the Sixers should absolutely try to make that happen. We'll see what that ultimate decision is. If you're getting this incredible offer of multiple draft picks and a player that could potentially help you next year, I don't know how Daryl Morey can honestly look himself in the mirror and turn that down, especially when factoring in how this entire season has gone. And while I think the best days of this Sixers team could still possibly be ahead on this season, there's also very much a world in which that never happens, that Joel Embiid is never able to consistently play on the season, that Paul George, his injury issues continue, that this team, it just does not find a way to get all on the same page and all healthy at the same time. That is a reality and an option that we have to keep in mind. So with that being the case there, it's frustrating to punt on 2 seasons in a row, and that's kind of why I'm out on that being the game plan. And the other standpoint of Guerschon Yabusele has very clearly been like the second best player alongside Tyrese Maxey. I mean, in that Nuggets game, once again, went for a career-high 28 points, made Nikola Jokic look like he was a straight layup lines going around him there, and was really impressive stuff from Guerschon from start to finish. When factoring in how to take a little bit off Maxey's plate, and once again, some ridiculous numbers that he's just carrying from a workload standpoint, once again, 4th in the league in time of possession, 2nd in the NBA in minutes, 2nd in the NBA in miles traveled per game. Maxey is everywhere on the floor. We know that about him. So with that being said, you cannot risk the slippage of frustration with the organization or him kind of falling back into those bad habits of shot chucking and looking miserable on the court, complaining to referees. And I do think you take a step further or step backward toward that direction if you were to move on from a guy like Guerschon there. So ultimately, It is frustrating that Tyrese Maxey will not be at the NBA All-Star game. I do believe he is an All-Star caliber talent, but I think we should all take a little bit of a deep breath, be happy that he's getting a week off, and see what the team elects to do moving forward. I'm optimistic Joel Embiid is back on the floor soon, but I was also kind of feeling it to be the case before this Nuggets game, and also kind of had hope that it could have been against the Celtics team, which that game will be tipping off tomorrow at this current time that he has already been ruled out with, as well as Paul George with the pinky finger. Would like him to be back on the floor in the short-term future. This is still kind of one of those buckle up, hold on stretches for this Sixers team. On the bright side, it has been more encouraging basketball on the floor. There's more of a fight, more of a will to win than we've seen for the larger part of the season. But the reality is this team will not reach its peak until they're fully healthy, and hopefully we can have an actual look at that soon. Regardless, let me know what you guys think in the comments and sound off your thoughts on Tyrese Maxey not getting recognized as an All-Star this year. I totally understand the frustrations. I won't lie, I had a peak where I was a little more heated than I am currently with it. I have kind of settled into the take and understanding that in the long run, I don't think this is the worst thing in the world for these Sixers and Tyrese Maxey specifically, but do hope that this is the last time that we're having these conversations about him not being a perennial All-Star. So drop those thoughts below. Appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning into this video here. As always, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button and dropping a like if you have not already. We'll be back talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.